Watch right now in the Front News project. Russia is on fire again. Strikes on the Dyagilevo airbase and Kadyrov's special forces barracks in Grozny. Zaporozhye direction, the 118th Brigade of the Armed Forces of Ukraine is eliminating Russian aggressors. And in Dnipropetrovsk region and Ternopil, the enemy's cunning shelling continues. Fiery, hot and blazing footage from the front line. Watch right now. The bloody war continues. The war that Vladimir Putin and his pack have unleashed on Ukrainian land. The heroic resistance of the Ukrainian armed forces and the entire Ukrainian people in the struggle for their freedom continues. Greetings, this is Front News with you, Vladimir Timoshenko. For the next 30 minutes, you will find out the truth about the war, which our journalists are obtaining from the hottest combat zones. So, are you ready? Then we begin. And we begin right away with exclusive material. Hell for Russians. Created for Putin's army by members of the 118th Separate Mechanized Brigade of the Armed Forces of Ukraine on the Zaporozhye front. Destroying as much military equipment, invaders and manpower as possible is helped by the American self-propelled artillery unit Paladin. Meanwhile, our defenders say the aggressors fear these precisely accurate strikes, so they try to destroy the American equipment. But the Ukrainian army regularly gives a strong response to the enemy. Artillerymen of the 118th Brigade took TSN correspondent Kira Oves with them to the positions. Her exclusive report follows.
The self-propelled artillery unit Paladin operates around the clock on the occupiers. In the clouds of smoke after the shot, there are a few minutes to reload the gun. The crew attacks enemy positions.
We simply kill them. The occupiers who came to fight here will die here. They need to understand this. They damaged the BM-21, destroyed the D-20 gun and the ZIL or Ural.
To understand the work of the Paladin, the crew underwent training in Germany. The 34-year-old gun commander with the pseudonym Poliana says, the Russians are very afraid of this equipment which strikes precisely and accurately.
It hits very well, most beautifully at night, especially if you hit an ammunition depot. It's very beautiful. We have different shells and many types. This machine in general fires 14 types of ammunition.
Russians are trying to stop our warriors with large caliber weapons, guided aerial bombs, but mostly with drones. Against them, soldier Kevin holds an anti-drone gun missile. The warrior is 53 and has been working in the 118th Brigade for a month now.
An FPV or small reconnaissance plane comes into view, I lock onto it, hold onto the hook until it falls. I really love fishing and all this is very similar, you know, to fishing.
A 23-year-old warrior with the pseudonym Student, after graduating from the military department and retraining as an artilleryman, voluntarily joined the army.
I can't watch videos, read the news that guys my age are dying. I am not the kind of person who will back down, leave the country and sit somewhere abroad. If there is to be a fight, everyone must fight.
The student says that Russians do not give up trying to advance in the Zaporozhye direction. But Ukrainian soldiers are ready to warmly welcome them with greetings from a Paladin.
If the occupiers advance, it will be a very big mistake for them. The biggest. It's better they don't do it. Turn around and go straight to Moscow. When we go out to work, believe me, the entire enemy army changes shoes on the fly. And sometimes they don't even have time because there's nowhere to hide. Their arms and legs fly apart. And so they deserve it.
Too.
The soldiers of the 118th Independent Mechanized Brigade say they are motivated to destroy the Russians to the last. After all, they set out to defend their homeland and the family waiting for them at home.
And now it's time to analyze the operational situation on the Kupiansk and Lyman fronts. The enemy continues its military terror here as well. On the Kupiansk direction, the aggressors tried 5 times during the day to advance towards our positions near Novaya Krugliakovka, Lozovaya and Sinko. All enemy attacks have already been repelled. The settlements of Petropavlivka and Lozova were also affected by strikes. On the Lyman direction, the occupying army attacked 15 times in the areas of Rekivka, Tverdokhlebove and Ampolivka. One attack is ongoing. But, as you understand, this week there were fires and blazes within the Russian Federation itself. For example, Putin's strategically important airbase was on fire. This refers to the Dyagilevo airbase, which is located in the Ryazan region. And it was there that the so-called Bavovna occurred. Well, of course, a separate topic is the strike on Grozny. After all, the barracks of Kadyrov's special forces are under attack. At the same time, Russian soldiers took a hit in the Kharkiv direction. There, during the assault, the armed forces of Ukraine destroyed the Russian bridgehead in the Novomlinsk area, eliminating the Russian Federation's landing forces. All the details are in our report right now.
It was very hot in Russia again. The Dyagilevo Air Base in Ryazan, one of Russia's key strategic aviation air bases, was attacked.
According to open sources, where the 43rd Center for Combat Application and Retraining of Flight Personnel is located, equipped with 295 MS aircraft, 222 M3, 134 UBL and An-26. In addition, the 203rd Separate Air Refueling Regiment, equipped with Il-78 refueling aircraft, is located at this airport. Next to the Dyagilevo Air Base is located the 360th Aircraft Repair Plant.
Several explosions occurred in Novorossiysk. The port where Russia keeps its missile carriers was hit.
This is the base location of the remnants of the Black Sea Fleet. The main danger accordingly is cruise missile carriers. Therefore, both the Dyagilevo airfield and the Novorossiysk port are legitimate military targets for Ukraine.
It was a restless night in Grozny as well. Drones attacked the Special Forces regiment responsible for protecting the head of Chechnya, Ramzan Kadyrov. At this time, HIMARS is back in action. The armed forces of Ukraine struck a gathering of Russians in the Kursk region. The defense forces of Ukraine struck the command post of the 83rd Separate Air Assault Brigade of the Russian Airborne Forces in the Kursk region. As a result of the attack, 12 Russian soldiers, including 4 officers, were killed. Another 25 were wounded. The strike occurred during a ceremonial formation marking the anniversary of the brigade's formation.
The uniqueness of this operation lies in the fact that the main intelligence directorate of the Ministry of Defense accordingly managed to obtain information about the time and accordingly the date of the operation. Formation of personnel, the Ukrainian armed forces cannot fail to take advantage of such information, having in their arsenal means of destruction, namely the American ATACMS and HIMARS missiles. They could not. A brilliant operation by the Ukrainian side, which once again testified that the Russians do not learn even from their own mistakes.
Meanwhile, dissatisfaction is growing among the military personnel of the Korean People's Army stationed in the Kursk region. They complain that they are not being fed well. The Kremlin even sent a general to deal with this.
The Russian Federation has actually already paid for this cannon fodder with supplies of lubricants. It is about the delivery of approximately 1 million barrels of oil to the territory of the Democratic People's Republic of Korea. Let me remind you, according to the economic sanctions imposed against this country, the DPRK has the right to purchase no more than 500,000 barrels per year. That is, in fact, the Russian Federation has exceeded the established norms for the shipment of fuel and lubricants for this country twice. Therefore, accordingly, no one will heed the complaints of North Korean military personnel.
That won't be. Everything is paid for.
The Russian armed forces also repelled dozens of attacks. The enemy attacked the most in the Pokrovsk and Kurakiv directions. According to the head of the Kherson Regional Military Administration, Russia's near-term plans include a new offensive on Ukrainian Kherson.
The Russians have no operational reserves for conducting an offensive operation. It is about a large-scale landing operation, namely crossing the Dnipro, Currently, fierce battles are being fought for control over the islands in the Dnipro floodplain, and the relocation in the area of the Antonovsky Bridge has been recorded, but there is no basis to say that the Russian Federation has accumulated enough operational reserves to conduct a large-scale landing operation at this time.
In any case, one thing is clear. The war has long been going on within the territory of the Russian Federation itself. And this means that explosions and hits on Russian military targets will only increase every day. After all, the armed forces of Ukraine know their business.
Also, during the week, the enemy continued to terrorize the peaceful residents of the Dnipropetrovsk region. 4 people died, 25 were injured, 18 people remain in hospitals as a result of the rocket attack on the urban-type settlement Sarichanka. Among them is an 11-year-old boy. About how the residents of Tsarichanka are trying to recover after the hellish attack by the Russians will be reported and shown by KTSN journalist Olga Pavlovska.
Without a roof and not a single intact apartment, the 2-story building in Sarichanka was destroyed by an explosion. On the ruins of his own home, Vladimir is sorting through the broken belongings, but most of all, he is waiting for news from the hospital. His wife Lyudmila is in intensive care.
She was sitting in that room right there at the computer, and I was in the living room watching TV. Then I went to the bathroom and she was here. The explosion pushed me away, but she was injured.
How love saved 2 children, she still cannot explain, as if she felt they should not stay home that evening.
We just went on some errands. We took the older child with us. He didn't want to come. We begged him. The younger one went to a friend's in the neighboring house. There's a basement. The children got very scared. Even now they can't even talk.
Her house, miraculously empty during the explosion, is pierced by debris.
Look at the hole. Trash.
This is brutal. It just burned. The bed burned. There were fragments in the walls. The bedroom was also damaged. If we had been here, I'm telling you, we wouldn't have survived.
The Russians struck the village with a missile on Saturday evening. Fires broke out.
In the basement, they heard it already. It happened. And it was like that. Many people. There were screams. They helped each other. They came from the villages. They came and helped.
4 people died, among them those who were just passing by.
Driving along the road, the car was damaged. They are seriously injured and deceased from that car. From the house, fortunately, there are no fatalities.
Another deceased woman from the private sector who was on the street, people say.
I was sitting by the window. It went bang. The main thing is, I was on the bed, and it didn't hit me, but the glass went like this. It hit those who were in the yard. You see, a woman from this house died, a fragment straight to the heart.
Because of this strike, multiple Sabib. More than 20 people were injured, including an 11-year-old child. The life of the boy with a traumatic brain injury is not in danger, but most adults receive severe injuries.
These were mainly multiple injuries. These included limb injuries, arms, legs, abdominal area, lumbar region. In other words, the injuries were quite serious.
Many people say managed to avoid injuries due to chance.
The son lives here. He came to us for the weekend. If he hadn't come, I have no words. There was a tenant living here, but thank God she wasn't there. She also left this apartment. If she had been there, well, it's very scary to imagine what would have happened to her. Because there are walls, there are fragments in the walls, a lot of glass, a lot.
The people who live here have temporarily moved in with relatives. Whether the damaged house can be restored should be determined by a special commission.
And now another terrifying yet hopeful life story of this war. He spent 2.5 years in captivity, and when he returned home, he discovered he had a son. Here's a little more from the biography of the Marine Andrei Turos. At the start of the full-scale war, he defended Mariupol. That's where he was captured. He went through all the abuse and torture, and in September returned to his native land. So what is life like after Russian captivity? And is Andrei managing to adapt to his new role as a father? Reporter Alina Lisova from KTSN will tell and show us.
The first hugs with the dearest ones. And meeting the son he didn't know was born.
Dad, how did you turn out? Tell me.
About the torment and survival in Russian captivity.
I'm sick of the word Russia. I'm sick of the word Putin. I wish they weren't on the map of the universe.
And a wish the fulfillment of which was awaited the most.
Я хотів, щоб
I wanted to receive a letter with my wife sent on it. It's just a dream.
моя дружина. Це просто мрія.
We are meeting with Andrei near the hospital. All the time since returning from captivity, which is 2.5 months, he has been undergoing rehabilitation.
Психологічно
Psychologically, a little better than before. I'm currently working with a psychologist. Physically, they found 3 fractures in my right leg, a displaced kidney, and constant headaches. All these head injuries have their effects.
An officer of the 36th Marine Brigade. He was in captivity for 2.5 years. He admits that he still cannot get used to the fact that he can move freely, look at the sky, breathe Ukrainian air, and spend time with his closest ones.
там же
or every
постійно
other day, or once every 3 days. Throughout this whole period, they use, beat, and break out stun guns, hammers, sledgehammers, nails, and what else haven't I mentioned? Sticks. I am slowly adapting, but it's really hard. I want to catch up with all
First
of
of
this.
all, Andrei talks about his son, about becoming a father, which he found out during the exchange on September 14th when Leon was almost 2 years old. The TSN film crew witnessed their first meeting. Then the little one continuously ran in circles, and Andrei looked at him in confusion and was afraid to approach, as he was waiting for a medical examination.
Leon, Dad, how did you turn out? Tell me.
For the first time, he came and was able to hold his own child later, so after making sure there were no infections following captivity.
чудом лікарка відпустила
By a miracle, the doctor let me go. I had the chance to be with my son and my wife.
з сином, з дружиною.
Hi, son.
I look up, there's a pause and a smile. I simply adore my son. He is such a good boy, such a handsome one.
Це було так
It
трошечки
was like that, a bit tender and joyful and funny, since he couldn't properly hold Leon. It was uncomfortable for him, but he very quickly somehow found a connection with him, as if those 2.5 years never existed.
періоду в 2,5 роки.
About expecting a child, his wife Elena wrote in letters that got lost in a Russian prison. She is a medic herself, served in the same brigade with Andrei in Mariupol. She was captured the same way but was released during the first exchange. She says she learned about the pregnancy only at home.
Коли мені лікар сказав, що
When the
в мене
doctor told me that I was already 12 weeks along at the time of the exchange, I felt very sorry for my child, that he experienced all these conditions with me, cold, malnutrition, all these abuses. I really wanted to tell my husband this news because he really wanted children.
I dreamed of Zaporozhye even before the full-scale war began. My wife and I were already thinking about it. We wanted to buy a house to have a child and bring them to our own place. But because of the war, we were left with nothing. We were left only with dreams. But the first dream is the one that came true.
Now they live with Andrei's parents in the Chernihiv region, while Elena's house in the Kherson region is under occupation. The in-laws supported her during her pregnancy and the first year after Leon's birth. They waited for Andrei together and rejoiced at his return together.
Tomorrow Andrei will be replaced. It was the evening after these words. I probably never experienced anything like this. My blood pressure went up. I practically spent the whole night walking around the house.
не вірили, що я
They
зараз
didn't believe that now we would hold our child by the hand, hug, kiss. But finally, we've waited for this.
ще дочекались.
Now this house will always be filled with children's laughter, and little Leon, without even realizing it, became a true miracle and helped the adults through difficult times.
Дивиться на
We look at him and think, you must live.
In the hospital, Andrei has to spend more than 1 week. Sometimes he is allowed to go home, and the Turose family gathers together, each time making only one wish.
щоб
For the
закінчилось.
war to end, for all children to come home.
All right, now we will analyze the situation on the Kurakov front of Russian world. And here it continues to destroy, kill and roam. On the Kurakov direction, the enemy attacked our positions near Bereski, Starye Terny, Zarya, Sontsevka, Kurakovo, Dalnie, Yelizavetovka, Anovka and Roman.
and made the
At this time,
present-
Ukrainian soldiers repelled all 47 enemy attacks. And now let's discuss the topic of minefields in the directions of enemy movement. Yes, Ukraine is currently critically lacking anti-personnel mines. Of course, we are waiting for help from allied countries. The United States, for example, is ready to provide Ukraine with anti-personnel mines, which, according to the Pentagon, can stop the enemy's advance. Prisia Sata Koesitia says, you know, the effectiveness of minefields, especially anti-personnel ones, was demonstrated by the offensive of the aggressors in the Rabotino area. Back then, the enemy, as they say, dug in and very meticulously mined the territory. More details in the material by Vitaly Afanasyev.
The Zaporozhye direction. Mark's group, under the cover of artillery and strike drones, begins to advance, pushing the occupiers onto a remotely mined field. At first, everything goes according to plan. Platoon by platoon, the occupiers, fleeing the battlefield, blow up on armored vehicles.
When the Machine 1, their vehicles came by, they often stopped in Novopokopivka. At that time, through the efforts of our crew, 6 units were destroyed.
It's thanks to the mining.
Yes.
Then Jackson says homemade anti-personnel mines were very helpful, which they learned to drop correctly from drones, but to mine, there was no possibility. They needed dozens of times more. In turn, the occupiers, preparing for the advance of the armed forces of Ukraine, managed to mine every meter of land. And our fighters, advancing in the Robotine direction, very quickly ran into minefields.
They used it in combination with regular fortifications, a properly arranged fire system, correctly deployed anti-tank guided missiles and so on. But mines played a very important role.
But for the Air Force, they also play a significant role, both in offense and defense. Especially when it comes to remote mining, then it's possible to save the lives of sappers who no longer risk their lives laying explosive gifts under fire, but send them with robots if it's about anti-tank mines. Anti-personnel mines can be delivered by artillery fire, but they are not yet on the front. Sappers still set up anti-personnel barriers manually.
In my opinion, the most effective Western-made are claymores. Speaking of the Soviet model, it's Mankas. They have a similar operating principle to claymore. And Ozanks, which I think are not used in Western countries at all.
In the latest weapons package from the United States, anti-personnel mines were announced for the first time, which seem capable of stopping local assaults by the occupiers. The Americans do not specify the type, but most military experts tend to believe that these will be highly effective mines called Adam. Our military is already somewhat familiar with these type of mines as they are packed in 155mm ram shell. Back in August, the heavy self-propelled artillery units received about 60,000 rams, but they were anti-tank mines. This time, evidently similar ones will come, but with anti-personnel mines.
There is no exact confirmation that it is about Adam. If it is indeed about it, then it refers to a 155mm artillery shell filled with 36 anti-personnel mines. Such a system allows for laying minefields at a distance of approximately 7.5 kilometers. If firing, for example, from a self-propelled howitzer M110, the area where these mines need to be laid is approximately 600 meters. This means that several munitions are required for dense mining to be fired at one target, at one zone, to reliably cover it.
The Pentagon does not specify what type of anti-personnel mines are included in the aid, but they emphasize that they are highly effective and will significantly slow down the advance of the Russians. The United States was reluctant to provide them for a long time, but after seeing that Russia uses them against Ukraine, almost everything except nuclear weapons, still decided. It is noteworthy that after this decision, politicians from certain countries immediately began to criticize the United States for transferring anti-personnel mines allegedly due to inhumanity.
It becomes disgusting when everyone for some reason remembers the bans for Ukraine but does not recall that Russia consistently uses the same anti-personnel mines with remote mining and without self-destruct mechanisms.
Moreover, after the state's decision to supply anti-personnel mines, some countries, including Finland, are seriously considering their effectiveness in war and are already planning to discuss withdrawing from the convention banning anti-personnel mines.
The situation has changed significantly since Finland abandoned anti-personnel mines and joined the Ottawa Convention in 2012. Now it is necessary to reconsider this issue.
In the meantime, it's hotter than ever on the front. The occupiers are advancing from all sides. We are losing people. American mines are expected here, but because the Russians are clearing the mines themselves. And they advance over their own corpses. Stopping the meat assaults will not be an easy task.
And right now, more details about the operational situation on the Vremivka front. Let's be honest, this is another sacred goal for Putin and his pack. Accordingly, the situation here is also extremely tense. On the Vremivske direction, our troops repelled 35 attacks near the Konstantinopolsky diversion of Sukik, Yaliv, Makarivka and Novodarivka. By this time, all encounters have concluded. Additionally, airstrikes hit the populated areas of Kamar and Vremiv. Also, during the week, the enemy heavily shelled the Ukrainian city of Ternopil. An enemy drone hit an ordinary 5-story building. A 45-year-old resident died. His wife and 3 neighbors were injured. Almost 100 people were evacuated from 2 buildings most affected by the attack. TCH correspondent Svetlana Pavluk found out where the people spent the night and whether they would be able to return to their apartments.
At 1 in the morning sun, a Russian drone flew into the upper floors of this building. A powerful explosion threw people from their beds. Osa, asosa, sasil.
I was sleeping whoosh and I'm already under the balcony.
A fire immediately broke out. Rescuers evacuated residents who could not escape by themselves due to the thick smoke. They were immediately housed in a neighboring school and in an urgently deployed emergency center. The man who died lived on the 5th floor. A neighbor from below tried to save him.
I ran to the 5th floor. I see a fire in a 3-room apartment. A person is lying on the floor. I ran to drag him to the entrance, but he was already
The
dead.
injured people were immediately hospitalized. By the morning, 3 were sent home. The deceased man's wife sustained burns. She remains in the hospital. Residents of neighboring buildings came together and took in people from the affected entrances for the night.
We just ran out. Took only the documents and that's it. We ran out without coats. Now we have already taken our things and all the necessities. We were taken in by a neighboring house.
A Russian drone destroyed 2 entrances of the building. In the morning, rescuers allowed residents to enter their apartments and retrieve necessary items. The 5-story building is currently disconnected from gas, heating and electricity. Almost 50 windows are broken here. 20 cars in the courtyard are damaged. It was loud. Our relatives went immediately. As reported by the regional administration, Russians targeted the building with a Geran drone. The upper floor apartments were the most affected. Experts are examining the building and will need to report if reinforcement of the load-bearing structures is necessary, what work needs to be done, and when people will be able to return home.
After the technical condition of this entrance and the whole building in general is assessed, a decision will be made regarding permission to return. I hope this issue will be resolved by the end of the day today.
At the moment, people are waiting to have at least the windows glazed so they can return to their apartments.
That's all for today. But very soon in the program, news with new, unique reports from our journalists in the most heated war zones obtained to ensure you know the truth. This was Vladimir Timoshenko. Take care of yourself and your loved ones.